No, it's not a big troll, even though I look like I might have just got done diving for some ocean-hued clams myself. We're gonna be going over Kaveh as well as the ocean-hued clam set and some other artifacts that you might want to think about for this character. And even though I'm gonna have a weapon video that comes out probably tomorrow for you guys, we'll touch on those as well. So real quick, there's just some very important things about Kaveh and his uses that you might need to know about. So let's cover those real quickly. Now, obviously we all know he's gonna be applying Dendro, but there's gonna be 3 different playstyles that I see players using Kaveh as in their team. One of them is going to be where he's just sort of your on-field Dendro driver. He's applying Dendro element so your other characters can apply Hydro and activate the elemental reaction Bloom. He won't actually be the one, proccing the blooms, and he doesn't really need elemental mastery for that build. And he's just kind of a Dendro DPS character. The other ones are going to be, maybe you just don't really know what to do with Dendro and you don't really care about elemental gauge theory, and you just kind of smash stuff together, give some people elemental mastery, and he's going to sort of apply Bloom some of the times, but not all of the times. And then there's going to be the third playstyle where you do your due diligence, and he's going to be proccing the Bloom reaction a ton for you, detonating all of the different Dendro cores you generate, and that build is going to still be a Dendro driver that still wants crit chance, crit damage, but it's also going to want elemental mastery as well. So how is the ocean-hued clam set going to fit into this? Well, as you can see, we have some elemental mastery there, so the second and third playstyles are pretty powerful. As far as his overall kit goes, his multipliers on his normal attacks aren't that crazy. If you've seen his charge attack though, it's pretty cool. And it's pretty unique. Think of like Noel's where they just kind of spin around, except Kaveh doesn't spin around himself. He just kind of walks around with his briefcase and the sword just flails around him over and over very, very quickly, which is pretty nice as well. His E is going to apply Dendro and also detonate all of the cores around him. But the real one here is the elemental burst, which is going to infuse him with the Dendro element. And this is where a lot of the Dendro application and his ability to become a Dendro driver is going to come from. Now, this does have 80 energy cost, so an average Kaveh is going to need around 170 to 180% energy recharge. It's very difficult to hit that number while getting crit chance and crit damage and attack percent, as well as using a Dendro damage cup and have elemental mastery as well. So I think a lot of players are going to end up using an energy recharge sands, and it also makes for a lot of players an energy recharge weapon very valuable. But that's not the only thing we want to talk about here. He also has this passive right here, and this is going to be an Architect's Undertaking. Now, when a damage from a Dendro core, including Burgett and Hyperbloom, if you choose to use him in those teams, does damage to Kaveh, he will regain HP equal to 300% of his elemental mastery. And this can be triggered once every 0.5 seconds. So in these builds where Kaveh is going to have some amount of elemental mastery for the second and third playstyle, where he's going to be proccing some or all of your Bloom related reactions for you, you're going to have quite a significant amount of elemental mastery, and you're going to be able to hit yourself quite a few times with Bloom reactions and that self damage, which is going to build up the ocean-hued clam set. So when we're looking at different artifact sets to use on Kaveh, there's going to be 2 big ones here. Now, we want to talk about ocean-hued clam, but if you don't have access to ocean-hued clam, then you're going to need someone with the Deepwood memory set on your character, because it's going to be buffing up every character's elemental damage if they're Dendro related, because it's going to do Dendro resistance down. It's going to be a little bit worse actually for personal damage than ocean-hued clam for Kaveh, but it's worth having this on somebody, and if Kaveh has to be it, we're going to be wearing this one here. However, if you want something else to spice up your life, ocean-hued clam's pretty good. So the 2-piece here, actually the healing bonus isn't the biggest joke ever because of his first ascension, self-healing him equal to 300% of his elemental mastery, and that's going to buff that up as well. So the ocean-hued clam is going to be pretty good, especially if you want that full EM driver, detonator, Bloom Kaveh team, and you've been out there, you're a geo enthusiast farming up this domain, you've got a lot of ocean-hued clam laying around. We have good news for you. This could be one of his best 2 sets with what we know about him right now. Now, I am going to have a unique and specific weapon tier list or best weapons video, but I do want to touch on this right here because we talked about the 3 playstyles at the start of this video: the full DPS driver, the DPS driver that may or may not bloom, and then like the DPS driver that blooms everything for you, or the EM build as well, whichever one you want to do that tries to bloom everything for you as well. So the closer you get to the third playstyle, the disparity in power that you gain from something like a 5-star weapon compared to some of the 4-star weapons actually goes down. The weapons actually do closer amounts of damage. And this is because if you're trying to do a full DPS build, well, something like the mailed flower, you don't really care about elemental mastery on it. You're trying to do full damage. You don't really care about any of these effects at all because you're just building straight damage. So that's going to give you something like the Wolf's Gravestone, the Unforged, the Redhorn Stone Thresher, and Beacon of the Reed Sea, which I want to talk about here in a second, being much more powerful for the full DPS builds. But Beacon of the Reed Sea, now if you are a Dea enjoyer, because you're going to be healing yourself up for 300% of your own elemental mastery, so he can take full advantage of Reed Sea, and I think that's a great place to be. But you kind of feel a little bit bad. This weapon's actually going to be pretty good for you, especially if you don't really want to do that full EM Kaveh build. You kind of want him to be the Dendro driver that does damage. You want to kind of build him full DPS. This thing is insane. This thing's great. The base attack on it, 608 for a 5-star, isn't the highest, but it's still pretty good. 33 crit, and he does gain a big benefit of the refinement ability because you're going to be able to get the full value from this because you're in a Bloom team and you'll be taking damage, so you will be proccing this bonus attack as well. And then a lot of times you don't really need a shield in your Kaveh team, so you can actually get bonus max HP, increasing your survivability, and you don't care about the damage you're taking from the Bloom. Another weapon that's actually pretty good if you're trying to balance your energy recharge and energy gain with building damage on your artifacts. So you have a lot of artifacts with really high crit chance, crit damage, elemental mastery, but they don't have any energy recharge on them. The Nagamasa is actually going to be one of the best weapons for a 4-star for Kaveh because it has energy recharge on it, increases your elemental skill damage, and then on top of that, it's going to, yes, make you lose energy when you use an elemental skill and hit an opponent, but then you will regenerate your energy over time. So in R5 version of this, if you want to get in there and make a bunch of them, 12% elemental skill damage, and you lose 3 energy, but then you gain 5 energy every 2 seconds for a net total of 15. So you actually gain 12 energy, and it gives you 45% energy recharge. It's going to be one of the easiest weapons to build a Kaveh with, especially if you're trying to build him full damage, because this just gives you pretty much almost all of the necessary energy requirements that you would need for your build, and you can focus strictly on full damage for your damage DPS. Almost said Kaveh. Now, as you get into more of the, I want to bloom a little bit, maybe not all of the time, I still want to do damage with a sub DPS sort of driver build, but I want to do at least a decent amount of blooms. We have stuff like the Makara Aquamarine as well as the Mailed Flower, which is probably something that you'll use. Honestly, these two weapons are very close together. If they're both at R5, then the Mailed Flower is like slightly worse. We're talking like 1%, 1.5% at best worse than the previous weapon, which is pretty good. So this is going to give you elemental mastery. It's got okay attack. And then when you use an elemental skill and hit an opponent and trigger a reaction, you're going to be able to get bonus attack and bonus elemental mastery at the same time. So this is going to be the equivalent of almost 200 elemental mastery and 24% attack and 565 base attack for a 4-star weapon, all in the same weapon. And if you were there for that event, you can just level this thing up. You're already going to have it at R5, and it's a fantastic weapon. Now, something that I do want to note here, because it's actually pretty bad at the end of the day in a lot of these Bloom teams, but it might have crossed your mind, is the Rain Slasher, because, well, this has elemental mastery on it. That should help your Bloom reactions. Hey, you're building a sub DPS Kaveh build? Well, hey, check out the refinement ability. It gives you bonus damage to enemies afflicted by Hydro and Electro. That seems pretty good in a Bloom team, right? Well, a lot of the times, unless you have so much Hydro application that you overwrite and destroy the Dendro element being placed on your enemies, there's not a lot of times where you're actually going to have a Hydro aura on the enemy. It's actually a lot of the times going to be a Dendro aura in most common teams that are trying to bloom things. So you actually won't gain this refinement ability. At the end of the day, if you don't have the ability, you're not getting the 36% at R5. You're just kind of equipping a 510 attack, 165 elemental mastery weapon, and that's going to be significantly worse compared to something like the Mailed Flower. So you might want to actually rethink your Rain Slasher approach with your team. Try it out. Sure, if you want to be, you want to try it yourself, 100%. Go try things yourself, but pay attention to your enemies' auras. If you see a lot of the times they don't have hydro on them, you're not gaining the benefit of this refinement ability, and you're definitely better off using some other weapon. Now, speaking of weapons, there's one big weapon here I want to talk about. I know I said I wasn't gonna do a bunch of weapons, but this one also needs a PSA of sorts. Now, the Serpent Spine, from my findings, as well as some other findings of other players that I've seen so far, it's a very powerful weapon for Kaveh for all of the builds. Straight damage driver, damage dealing that also blooms a little bit, significant blooms, but also you want to deal some damage. It's good for all of those builds because this weapon is just so efficient for a 4-star weapon. Has crit rate on it, which helps your damage, but not only that, it's just giving you straight up damage bonus, up to 50% more damage bonus, which is great. And you don't care about the damage you take because you heal yourself. Well, you do care about the damage you take with this weapon, because if you're taking damage, you're not shielded, you're removing stacks from this weapon. So if you're running a Kaveh Bloom team and you don't have a strong shield, stay away from Serpent Spine. Stay away from it. Don't run some don't run an ocean hued clam, okay? Serpent Spine, no shield build, because it's just not gonna be good. Also, alternatively, don't run an ocean hued clam shield team with the Serpent Spine. You gotta take damage to proc the thing. You gotta do the thing, as far as I know, because, well, based on what his Ascension here says and how it works from what I know, you actually have to take the damage. So if you're shielded for the Serpent Spine, and you're on ocean hued clam, you don't take damage, and thus you don't heal, and then you don't make bubbles. So these three things together don't really work the greatest. So if you're not using a shield, don't use the spine. If you are using a shield, don't use ocean hued clam, please. Those things do not work together. We needed to have that PSA. Now, there's gonna be a lot of weapons that a lot of people are gonna ask about. I'm gonna have that video out, so if you wanna see it tomorrow, it should come out either in the morning or sometime in the afternoon. Make sure you like this, subscribe, whatever the traditional YouTube algorithm stuff is. I don't know how it works anymore. But as far as stuff like the Sacrificial Greatsword, can you use it? Sure. Are they going to be slightly worse? Sure. There's going to be a lot of weapons in here that are going to be 10, 15% worse. You have all really good options, crafted options like the Nagamasa. Fantastic. Use this thing over the other ER weapons. If you want some EM plus attack, you have the Mailed Flower, you have the Aquamarine. If you're looking for 5-star weapons as your DPS build, it's not going to be hard to really think about which is the best 5-star DPS weapon for a Claymore. They're all going to be doing really good stuff. Beacon of the Reed Seed's fantastic. Wolf's Gravestone, still fantastic as a DPS weapon. Unforged is fantastic. And then Skyward Pride is another 5-star ER weapon. This one's also really good as well. Has really high base attack, so you get good returns on attack percent from party in general, or maybe you just get more return from attack percent in your artifacts. It also is going to increase damage that you do, period, from this refinement ability here. And then, while not the greatest thing ever, but you do have the Elemental Burst Vacuum Blades, which is still free damage. So this weapon's actually pretty good, and one of the best weapons for I want to bloom a lot, but I still want to do damage weapons, because it gives you a mix of damage bonus and free damage from the Vacuum Blades. Has really high base attack. 674 is like some of the highest you can have across 5-star weapons in the game. And it also is going to give you damage bonus up. So maybe you're sitting there with an R5 Skyward Pride and you're like, wow, this thing, I need to dust it off. 16% damage, 160% Vacuum Blades, and 36% energy recharge, which lowers the ER you need in your artifact, so you can build more attack, which is going to be good with the 674 base attack. Maybe you need more crit chance, more crit damage, more elemental mastery. That is what this stat does here, because it is a requirement for him to have and meet that 170 to 180% energy recharge in his build, and this is going to facilitate that very well. Now, as far as characters inside of a Kaveh team, it's really not that hard to figure out what characters are going to be decent with Kaveh. If you just look at any other Bloom teams that you've seen around, he's going to be pretty good with those characters as well. But something else that's going to be really cool for Kaveh is a SHATTERBLOOM team as well. So if you want to try out a SHATTERBLOOM team and you want to really maximize the ocean hued clam damage, or that type of person, then you have people that are cryo that can also buff up either your elemental mastery, so you get more bloom reaction damage. So something like a C6 Diona would be really good for 200 free EM. She can help heal your team again. She can also provide shields if you need to for when Kaveh swapped out, because a lot of the downtime on her shields hurts a lot of teams, but you can use Diona to protect non-Kaveh teammates and then Kaveh can just absorb the blooms in the Ocean Hued Clam, boom, pop them up, get them good. It's going to be fun that way. You also have something like C6 Rosaria for physical resist down, Shenhe, physical resist down. Maybe you want Eula in there and you want to make like a weird Eula team. Probably won't be the best. Eula's very hungry on energy, but someone's going to ask. I wouldn't advise it, but you could do it. And on top of that, not only are you playing SHATTERBLOOM, which is a team that, if you don't know, likes to do bloom reactions and then freeze enemies and then shatter them in a full EM build with Kaveh being the driver, he's often going to also be doing the shatter damage as well. So I have a Layla SHATTERBLOOM team, which is pretty cool. You're going to be able to mimic that with Kaveh, which sounds pretty awesome. I want to see someone do an Ocean Hued Clam, SHATTERBLOOM Kaveh team where you're getting big bonus shatter damage. I've been able to get my Layla shatter for over 20k a shatter. And then you're also in the Ocean Hued Clam on your Kaveh, and then the blooms are coming up. Those are blowing up for damage. You're shattering things for damage, and the bubble pops for more damage. That's going to be a pretty cool build, I think, as well. But one thing to note about Ocean Hued Clam is that your physical damage bonus up doesn't affect that. It really only cares about physical reduction. So if you want to really buff the bubble damage, it's not necessary and might be a little restrictive. Rosaria is going to be fantastic. I think it might be the #1 option if you have a C6 Rosaria. A lot of cryo application, very long lasting elemental burst, has crit rate for your Kaveh as well, which makes him easier to build as a DPS, EM, ER. He needs all of the stats. So Rosaria is going to be awesome for him in a SHATTERBLOOM team. And I think that's probably going to be, if you have it, his best friend in that team. So do I think Kaveh is going to be a meta breaker? No, but I think he's got a lot of really cool and applicable teams. And do this one thing for me. If you're here already, hit that like, show the interaction, because apparently that's the only thing the algorithm cares about right now. Have fun out there, give someone a call, and I'll see you in the next one.